Hi everyone. In today's lecture, we will learn about SLI, SLO, and SLAs. So these are SRE related topics, but they're generally useful for SWEs to also understand, and it's generally good practice for everyone to understand in depth. So what is an SLI? So SLI basically it's service level indicator. SLO, it's service level objective, and SLA is service level agreement. So, what is a practical example of an SLI? It's an indicator, service level indicator. So, think it like this. Let's say there is this computer you have, and you have opened Gmail in here in your browser. You click on the compose button to compose a new email. Now, if you see from the user's perspective, once the user clicks this button, the expectation is within a very short period of time, the compose functionality should pop up. But it could happen that it takes a longer time. For example, let's say a bad user experience is it takes 10 seconds for this thing to come up. A good user experience is 10 milliseconds or 100 milliseconds, whatever you define. Now, that is your end user experience. Now, the team which has built this function, how would they know whether the end user is getting such a bad experience? So, that team which has built this functionality, they internally need to measure the performance of the system so the users are happy with the product. So, the performance of system measurement, how do you do it? You have to be objective. So, when you are objective, you have to define certain metrics. So, for example, in this case, the metrics would be the latency or the time it takes after clicking button and popping up the compose mail box. So you can define your SLI, which is a matrix basically. You can say latency is one of my SLI. So that is your SLI in this case. There can be more SLIs as well. For example, another SLI can be availability. By availability, I mean you click the button, it just errors out. It says, sorry, cannot compose email, instead of popping up after 10 seconds. So that's another bad user experience. Whether on clicking the button you see an error or not, or the user sees an error or not. So, how much available this button is actually, or how much available this uh, any functionality is. So, another metric you can define is availability. Similarly, there are generally multiple metrics you can define per functionality. Rule of thumb generally is you define 3 to 5 SLIs per user journey. That's a rule of thumb generally. So now let's go into the next step. So once let's say we have defined what is latency and what is availability, these are our SLI which we are going to measure. The next step is now what is an SLO. So SLO is your objective, service level objective. So you're measuring latency. Let's say this is your latency graph. So this is your time axis. This is your value of latency.